Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Arslanbek Makhmudov has breathed some much-needed life into his career with a first-round stoppage against Ricardo Brown, the previously unbeaten Ricardo Brown, in Canada, and this fight was on the Christian Mbili undercard. So all over lickety split, and Makhmudov, he needed it. But we'll talk about the fight and then a few thoughts, because I think the what next is interesting, because I think it's clear Makhmudov, we know he's got a level, and he wants to be in the mix for good fights, prove himself and try to get back to, more elite competition. But we'll have to see what happens. In terms of this one here, heading into this, I didn't really know how good Ricardo Brown was. Had an unbeaten record, what was it, 11, 12-0? 12-0 with 11 knockouts, and it was a case of clearly the guy's got some pop. We did see it in the first round. He did catch Makhmudov with a couple of shots, a couple of right hands, but ultimately Makhmudov was the one who was able to keep swinging, and it was an aggressive start. Makhmudov did what Makhmudov does. Came out literally swinging for the fences, and Brown decided, yep, I'm up for this. I'll trade with you. Ultimately, though, it was the right hands from Makhmudov, his favoured punch, that started to make a dent in Brown. Right hands ultimately backing him up, one sent him into the corner. And at that point, he never got out of that corner because Makhmudov kept trying to big looping shots, and ultimately a big right hand looping over the top catches Ricardo Brown, and he falls pretty hard actually, and it was sort of face first, falls down the ropes on the right hand to his right hand side, sort of partially catch him on the way down. He doesn't look that good getting up. It's definitely on wobbly legs. The referee doesn't like what he sees, and it's called off. And I did actually have a question in my mind initially. Was that a bit premature? Should he have been given the opportunity to continue? But I did go back and watch it again a couple of times just to sort of see. And when he was getting up, he definitely was struggling, initially to get up. Definitely not on solid legs at all. So I think the referee probably did him a favor. But arguably, yes, probably a little bit premature, but potentially saved a lot of damage and brain cells for Ricardo Brown, who was complaining and maybe had a little bit of a case there. But given, Makhmudov had him on the rack there, and he could have potentially been food for Makhmudov to potentially, starch him out, iron him out cold. I'm not too mad at it. I think the way the fight was going, it was only going one way at that point after that knockdown, but we'll never know. In terms of the performance, well, I guess it was very just Makhmudov-esque. We know what we're going to get with him. He's fun. He'll come out swinging. If he catches you, you could be in trouble. First couple of rounds, he's always going to be dangerous, and he proved that again with this fight. Ricardo Brown ahead of this said he wanted to take him deeper into the fight. He thought Makhmudov would be less effective further in, which we've seen in different fights. But ultimately, I think Brown was just a little bit too open, a little bit too slow. And Makhmudov himself is not exactly the fastest fighter in terms of his speed, but he has a degree of sort of raw, brutal power. And if you're not at a certain level, when you don't have the sort of skills that some of these guys like Caballero and Vianello have to deal with that, and they did deal with Makhmudov, you could be in trouble. And so too Ricardo Brown was. So he might call for a rematch or feel he was hard done by, but I think ultimately the referee probably did him a solid. So what now? What next for Makhmudov? Because the fact that he lost to Guido Vianello, who subsequently lost to Richard Torres, would probably suggest that Makhmudov, at least in terms of where he goes next, he's not going to step into a big fight against the likes of someone in the top 15 or 20, a la Inagi Caballero in the top 10, or even someone in the top 20. But he does need a step up from here. And I guess in terms of this fight, for Eye of the Tiger management, Ricardo Brown, also Canadian or fighting in Canada, there was sort of no sort of downside, because if Makhmudov lost and Ricardo Brown won, well, they could ultimately start pushing his career potentially. But Makhmudov, he stays on. He needed the win. He desperately needed the win. And given that Eye of the Tiger has this co-promotional deal with Top Rank, and Makhmudov's got on a co-promotional deal, potentially he could be matched with someone in that Top Rank stable. I sort of think that, maybe a Jared Anderson coming back, him versus Makhmudov, that's kind of interesting. Even if Richard Torres needs a different look against a taller fighter, someone who's going to really be punching and trying to punch holes through him, that's not a bad test at this stage for Richard Torres. There's other names there that potentially they could match him with that I think would be interesting fights. There is Stephen Shaw versus Makhmudov, a number of different potential matchups with American fighters or fighters that are in the Top Rank stable could, make some sense here. Obviously, with Guido Vianello, we've seen that, been there, done that, got the postcard. Some people might say, well, Vianello lost to Torres. What would be the point of Makhmudov facing Torres? Styles make fights and all that sort of stuff. But also, it would be another opportunity for Torres on the way up to sort of highlight his development and where he's at, to sort of see off that initial threat and then break down and stop a big brute. I think there would be something in that. He would get something out of that. And given Makhmudov somewhere, top 20 to 35, somewhere in that bracket, he is still a guy that if you're not good enough, he could sort of find you out. And I think with the aggression as well, certainly early on, the sort of raw brutality and the sort of fun and the exciting style he brings, if you're not careful, you could be on your seat of your pants on the canvas as well. I think Torres obviously would be a favourite for that, but there would be other names as well if they want to match him with others. I think they should, try to push Makhmudov into a bigger fight, because otherwise, what's the point? And he needed that, and he'll probably get a bigger fight. Hopefully, he's not out for too long. But I mean, I kind of like something like him versus Jared Anderson. Anderson needs some confidence. Didn't necessarily look great in his comeback fight. I don't know. What do you think of Makhmudov and the potential what next for him? Because at this point, he's just really got to make the most of it. It's always going to be a case that once he lost and the wheels fell off, and we said they would at some point, that his level would be established. But he's still a fun fighter to watch, and it is entertaining to watch the guy. Hopefully he is in some decent fight, even if it's someone in that sort of top 20 to top 35. Michael Hunter, where's he at the moment? You've also got Jerry Forrest, Jermaine Franklin, other American opponents potentially. I don't know. Some of these guys potentially could be enticing sort of fights against the Makhmudov. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.